Yo, welcome to another episode of the Super Team Podcast. Today's episode is very special. Akshay, why is it so special?
Today we have Armani Ferrante, who is a founder of Coral, which is a holding company that is launching a suite of incredible products in Web3, starting with Solana and xNFTs, as you may have seen on Twitter, is one of the flagship products that we're very excited to talk to him about.
And of course, Anchor, if you're a developer, you must have heard of Anchor Lang, which is, Abhishek, who's one of the top devs in the DAO. He speaks very highly of. He's also joining us on today's podcast, just so we have another developer who can actually engage with our money as opposed to just the two of us low IQ people. We have Gigabrain Armani Ferrante with us, and me and Akshay are the lowest IQ people he has ever interacted with. And that is why, to balance things out, we've called Gurudev Abhishek, also known as Shek.dev, on the podcast. Welcome, guys. Armani, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Armani, tell us about yourself and how did you get into crypto?
Yeah, a little bit about myself. So, started, got into crypto, kind of took a pretty normal path for your average, like kind of developer in the Bay Area. So, kind of went to school at Berkeley, graduated, got a job at big, Evil Corp in Silicon Valley, and kind of spent a year kind of hacking on iOS and Mac OS stuff, and then kind of saw the crazy stuff happening in crypto in 2017, and kind of thought it was the most exciting thing that was happening in tech at the time. And so kind of like jumped ship pretty quickly and decided to get into crypto. Didn't really have any plans other than I thought like Ethereum was like the coolest thing ever. And like the idea of like a distributed, like global, like supercomputer that was permissionless and anyone can build on really like captured my imagination. Just jumped in, started like contributing to some open source. And then like a buddy of mine kind of reached out to me and said, hey, we're starting this like trading firm called Alameda Research, and kind of just like it wasn't exactly what I was intending to do, and then kind of just like fumbled into kind of working on the trading systems there. Kind of have been in crypto ever since, just like working more on like the crypto native side of things, working on protocols, blockchains. Most recently, like Solana over the past 2 years. And so, long story short, it's kind of like my kind of typical journey, I guess, like getting into crypto.
So you initially thought Ethereum was the coolest thing ever. So I want to know what happened when someone introduced Solana to you. Why did you decide to make that pivot? What was that thought process like?
Yeah, so I actually made the pivot out of Ethereum much earlier. So I think in 2018, they were talking about sharding and the idea of execution sharding. And I did not really think it was a great idea for a lot of various reasons. And so started looking into alternative L1s. The story with Solana, honestly, was totally unexpected and totally took me by surprise. Basically, what happened was I was back at Alameda, and Nishad and Sam were both like, "Oh yeah, check out Solana. This is this blockchain that like we're interested in." And I was like, "All right, great." Sam's like says, "Look at Solana. That's enough for me." I started looking at it, and kind of long story short, here we are.
In our part of the world, a lot of developers have been asking to have you on the pod. You're sort of like this developer Jesus by virtue of your initial work with Anchor and now with xNFT. And maybe we can talk a little bit of both. But can you talk through some of what Anchor was and is and how that's evolving?
The story with Anchor is kind of just like it's something that I saw that like Solana just had to have. So we started working on Solana, maybe, I guess like 2 years ago. It's been a while now. And back in those days, like Serum was the only program that was on Solana. There are some wallets, but not much else was built. If you take a look at like the old, like the original Serum source code, it's like pretty crazy. Like there's a lot of like low level like memory management and like pointer arithmetic and just like serialization, deserialization, account validation checks. It's a very, very sophisticated program that I would suspect that the majority of developers would not be able to like read, use, or access. So, I started working on Solana and started building smart contracts, and I quickly came to the realization, or really, I really came to a existential breakdown, which it was that I was not able to like write secure smart contracts. Like the first program I ever wrote was like this lockup program it was like kind of like a vesting program. You deposit money, funds or tokens into a program and it releases it over time. And I very quickly realized it was like horribly insecure, and it was like this silliest like account validation bug. And basically came to the conclusion that, well, like nobody's going to use any of this stuff unless we have like a good framework to make it easier to not only write secure smart contracts, but also make the development process faster. And so I kind of like went down this path of like developing Anchor. I honestly didn't want to write it. I asked the Solana guys. I was like, hey, are you guys going to do it? I was like in the Discord asking Michael Vines. He's like, no, we're not going to build a framework. We hope like other people in the community do it. So I was like, fuck. I said, fuck. Okay, I guess I'll do it.
And before Anchor, there were like 10 people who could actually write low-level system code.
That's right. Yeah. Nobody was writing smart contracts on Solana. I think Mango is like one of the only teams that started chewing glass on FIDA. So yeah, that's kind of how Anchor came about.
I wanted to ask Armani on if you can explain to me, like I'm 5, Akshay is like he's 5, me like I'm 3, about what was the problem that you saw with Ethereum's sharding as a scaling solution? Why did that not sit well with you?
Yeah, so also maybe to be clear, since Ethereum has pivoted away from this solution, and so they also came to this realization and have since pivoted to a roll-up centric scaling approach. But the original idea of like, I guess what people colloquially refer to as like execution sharding, let's take the blockchain, split up the address space, so like your public keys representing your wallet, into a bunch of pieces. So I think they had like 100 shards in the first design. And instead of having one blockchain, you have 100 blockchains that then all operate in parallel, and that all kind of can communicate with each other, and then kind of maybe checkpoint back to like a central chain that like is responsible for coordination. And so what's nice about this is instead of having the throughput of a single blockchain, you have the throughput theoretically of like 100 blockchains because they're all running in parallel. And so you can like scale that way. But the basic problem, if you just like do the math, is that when we talk about scaling, we tend to talk about systems that scale linearly with respect to a specific resource. So for example, Solana scales linearly with respect to like hardware or cores on a machine, and more traditional systems like Cassandra, for example, or DynamoDB would scale linearly with respect to actually the number of machines. So there's like these elastic systems that scale up and down depending upon like, the amount of compute you need. Sharding does not have this property. Sharding has a very clear upper bound with respect to the amount that it can scale. And so just like thinking about it in most basic terms, ignoring everything else, this was like the first like pretty big red flag to me, which is that, okay, great, you have 100 shards, but then the moment that you use up those 100 shards, the game's over. You no longer are scaling, and you're now back at square one, in which case you have to now start exploring other things. And so that was like kind of the first kind of thing that I looked at, and I was like, okay, this is not like a compelling systems design to me, especially
my dumb brain is like, okay, why can't they just add 100 more shards?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the basic reason is that Ethereum's first thing that they would run into is just going to be hardware requirements. How big of a machine, how powerful of a machine do you need to run to like be part of the blockchain consensus, to take part in like the network operation? And Ethereum has this really interesting design constraint, which is, well, they want everything to be run on a commodity laptop, right? So you can, maybe everybody in the world can run a validator. But there's a much more practical reason other than that, which is just that if you look at the protocol and you try implementing it, it is very complex. And if you actually try to coordinate 100 different like consensus protocols that are all kind of operating in tandem in the way that kind of they're originally doing it with this like beacon chain that everybody was like checkpointing to, you have this explosion in complexity in the system, where it becomes very, very hard to actually understand like how things are going to execute.
Do you think this is like I guess this is the appropriate place to also address the modular versus monolithic design in blockchains? Do you have a view on that debate? Generally, are they like complementary in cases where the long tail uses modular designs, and some of the higher order applications use monolithic ones?
Yeah, they're definitely complementary, and I view them as like two totally separate points in the design space. So if you view like the universe of like all possible blockchain designs, like Solana monolithic designs are up here, and then like extremely modular designs like Celestia are over here. And I think it really depends upon like what you're building. So like the first trade-off that people point to when thinking about these things is they think about atomic composability. So the concept that like if you're in one smart contract, you can call another smart contract in the same transaction and have this like all or nothing property, which is what people refer to as like atomicity and like normal databases nomenclature. And this is really great from the perspective of the developer experience because it makes it really easy to like compose with other programs. So to have these like Lego pieces, for example, Solana, probably the best example of this is like Mango and Serum, where they were able to like build this like borrow lending mechanism on top of the Serum spot order book. And you can do that, and you can only do that on a system like Solana because, well, you have atomic composability. If you want to actually make the trade, you need to make sure you have enough funds or that your margin ratio is like healthy or whatever. And so if you want to build that type of system, well, you have to do it on a monolithic system. You simply just like couldn't do that unless you had atomic composability. But then, you have these systems like Celestia that are super compelling for their own reasons, which is like, the way the design is much less like a single ecosystem where everybody is building with this like serverless architecture. And it's much more of like, oh, we could all spin up our own like kind of like Celestiums or like layer 2 rollups is like maybe to think about it in like Ethereum terms. And so, yeah, I think like when you think of modular versus monolithic, like they're scaling in different dimensions. And I think you have to scale in both dimensions, right? So just because you have this modular design, it doesn't mean that like the execution layer doesn't scale, right? So you always will need a system like Solana where you have like non-sharded parallel transaction processing that allows you to scale across number of cores or number of machines or whatever. And then you can like layer that with a modular design, which is something that I think is like pretty compelling that not a lot of people have tried out.
Okay, Armani, we want to get to xNFTs because they're very exciting. But I have one last question before we get to xNFTs. One of the popular um, criticisms of a monolithic blockchain like Solana is once it gets crowded, you still have the same problem of scaling. So, do you foresee a world where there are rollups on top of Solana, or do you have a different vision of how Solana ends up having to scale?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think like I was trying to say earlier, I think that like you will always have the need for like auxiliary systems built on top of any blockchain. Like for example, you'll never run like a World of Warcraft on any blockchain. I don't care like how much marketing that you have. And so like you're always going to need these types of like layers on the system. But with that said, that doesn't mean that like just because you have these layers, it doesn't mean that you should like abandon the goal of like scaling out the base system. You should do both. You can do both, and you should do both. So yeah, I think definitely in the limit, like any sufficiently large application will always like move to its own system. And so like, for example, if you have Instagram running on Solana, like that would be a great place to start. But like eventually you're going to have billions of people. And if you have billions of people using the system every day, you're probably going to need to graduate to your own system. Right. And so like, I think systems like monolithic systems like Solana make a lot of sense for very specific use cases or very specific like ecosystem. So for example, I can see a world where all of the world's value flows through Solana, and that's a super compelling narrative to me. And something where I can look at it and I can be like, okay, yeah, I can see that. I can see like all of the world's financial transactions flowing through Solana. But the moment where you say, okay, I want to start throwing in games, or I want to throw in like NFTs or whatever, then you start needing to think about, okay, well, like if all of these systems are going to interact in the same database, like can they coexist? And if they can, great. And if they can't, then start thinking about how to like disentangle these ecosystems, and what should live together can stay on the same system, and what doesn't have to live together and maybe can move out into live in either a parallel blockchain that communicates via some bridge like Cosmos, or via some layer 2 or subnets. I'm not really super excited about the layer 2 terminology because it kind of like muddies things from a systems perspective. I think I prefer thinking of it in terms like I think the subnet terminology is kind of nice.
Is that because it's you just do you want to maybe explain real quick why that is?
Yeah. So the basic reason is because like whether you're an layer 2 or an layer 1, like in the limit, everything's just a layer 1. Like they have their own set of validators, they have their own execution, they probably have their own token, they have their own community, their own set of incentives. And then like in the limit, if zero knowledge proofs end up working out, then like, well, a layer 2 is layer 1 is layer 2, because you always just roll up the state from one system to another via like a proof or whatever. So I think like that is what the world will end up looking like if like we keep going with the trajectory that we're we're going. In which case, like, it's much more clear to me to think about like these systems in terms of like just connected blockchains rather than this story of like, oh, this complementary blockchain, which is like, they might be complementary, but it's more of it's more complementary from like a moral perspective than it is complementary from like a technical perspective.
All right, let's get to xNFTs. What are xNFTs? Why are they so exciting for everyone?
Yeah, so xNFTs are something I'm super excited about. So the basic idea boils down to taking an NFT protocol, and instead of having a JPEG, or in addition to having a JPEG, you have code. Okay, so that's like the 1,000-foot high level idea. And what falls out of that is a bunch of really exciting things. So there's like two basic stories that we're going to tell. The very first like use case of this technology is basically native Web3 applications and protocols in a single wallet. So right now, if you take a look at Phantom or MetaMask or any wallet on any blockchain, they are all very similar in the sense that they're all built by hard coding protocols. So if you take a look at Phantom, for example, not to diss on Phantom, they're amazing. They're an amazing team, but like, and this applies to all wallets, not just them. They only show your tokens and they only show your NFTs. When in fact, there are many protocols and many types of crypto assets. So as soon as you start using applications, assets start disappearing from your wallet, which is insane, right? So like, for example, if you take a look at my favorite NFTs, like the DeGods, right? My favorite NFTs that are the most expensive, the most valuable to me, they're the NFTs I want to show everyone, right? Whenever I open up my wallet, they're just gone from my wallet. Why are they gone from my wallet? Because I stake them. What actually happens is like you transfer your NFT from your wallet to their program, and then that like locks it up, right? And so this is like clearly a problem to me. And so kind of the first problem that xNFT is solving to make the wallet like an open programmable platform so that if you're an application developer or a protocol developer, you can build on the wallet so that your protocol can be rendered and the wallet can speak your protocol. So not only can I see my tokens and not only can I see my NFTs, but I can see all of my crypto assets in a single user interface. So every protocol on every blockchain in a single wallet. That's like kind of like the first vision, right? So I can see my NFT, my staked NFTs. I can see my Mango margin accounts. I can see my Magic Eden listings. I can use OpenSea. I can use any protocol on it, right?
Is it like a wallet? Like how do I use it? Is it gonna be like a plugin, or is it gonna be like an app?
Yeah, so it's a normal wallet, but we call it a backpack because, well, wallets are just for your credit cards and your cash. Backpack is a place for everything.
For everything,
right? Yeah. It has the same UI or same like familiar look and feel as a wallet. It can connect to applications like a wallet. It manages your private keys like a wallet, but much more than a wallet. It can speak all of these protocols. And as a developer, you can build applications for the wallet. So not only can you like define your own token standard, but you could also like build games and like a Tamagotchi or whatever it is that you want. Because it's just like building a normal app, but instead of shipping it to a website, you ship it to Arweave and tokenize it and render it inside of your wallet.
That's like, it's insane. It's like all my Web3 experience has been inside this box, right? Like this is how I knew how to interact with all of Web3, and then this kind of comes from outside saying actually there's so much more that's possible.
Do you
Right?
think, and do you think that as this evolves, one of the use case for NFTs is to tag attributes on users, right? And because if you like, you maybe have a centralized database like Mailchimp in a Web2 world where you can collect user addresses, email IDs, tag attributes on the most frequent shoppers or whatever, depending on what you're running. Versus in Web3, I guess the wallet, or in this case, the backpack, becomes the decentralized database in which you make an entry because there is no centralized database. And so, if you were to make tag user or your user attributes, would a backpack would the backpack allow functionality for developers to allow for that to happen?
You definitely could build that type of functionality into Backpack. I would imagine it would be like a separate protocol that you'd build on Solana or somewhere else. But then you could expose that functionality and speak that protocol by building your own xNFT and having your users use that through Backpack.
What were some of the other names you considered instead of backpack? Because
Oh boy. A lot of terrible names. Probably the worst Okay, so let me start with the best name. The other name that like we really loved was Maui, and
Maui.
basically we were sticking. I'm not saying it's a good name, but it was a name that like we loved just because like I don't know, everybody loves Hawaii. So like Tristan, my co-founder, is from Maui. Anchor and the Solana sea level runtime. It's all sea themed. Coral. It's all about the ocean.
What was the worst, Armani?
Oh, the worst. I honestly have no idea. Like the only one that I can possibly remember was Punk. So like PUNK. Like there was like literally a 1 minute period of time where me and Tristan were sitting in the office and we're like, Punk. That's it. This is the best name ever. And in hindsight, oh my God, was it such a terrible name? We are such idiots.
God bless you for getting out of the code cave to actually ask other people for some second opinion on that one.
Exactly. Yeah, we had to get a second opinion on it. But like, it had this like counterculture vibe.
It kind of feels like a backpack is like a phone essentially. Like a phone is your new backpack, right? So it feels like a soft copy of the phone. It's almost like
Yeah, maybe it's a kind of like an app store where you download an app. The code that needs to be executed also comes as part of it, right? And so that brings me to one question that I've been having since the time you announced xNFT and X being the executable aspect of an NFT, right? So what does it actually mean in practice? So does a compile program shipped as part of the NFT, or is it like a common interface for the wallet to speak to any program that is out there? So what is the execution piece? I mean, what does the execution stand for? How does that work in practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way it works in practice is so the on-chain protocol is actually the simplest part of everything, and all the heavy lifting really is with all of the tooling that we built off-chain. So this includes the developer framework and Backpack itself. And so basically the way it works is you can take the protocol like Metaplex, but really you can take any NFT protocol. And you can build a layer on top of it, which basically represents the xNFT. But really the simplest way of thinking about it is that you have this URI pointer inside of the Metaplex metadata, which points to some Arweave or IPFS blob of data. And that blob of data has your image for like normal NFTs. But instead of just having like the image URI, you also have a code URI. And that code URI is just a blob of code, right? And so what it actually is for us, it's a bundle of JavaScript that we build in a special way, and we build with our own framework. We basically have our own version of React that we built, but instead of importing from React, you import from like xNFT UI, which is just like the system that we built. So you build your web app or your xNFT in the same way that you build any other React app. You compile it with our toolchain, then you mint the NFT or mint the xNFT through kind of our app store. So then you do a query when you load the wallet, like you query any other NFT, which is you get all the tokens. But instead of getting the NFT JPEG, you now get the JavaScript bundle. And then you insert that into the system, and then we have all this orchestration inside a Backpack that then manages the sandbox code execution environments and UI rendering and all that fun stuff. So that's kind of like at a high level, at least how it works.
Awesome.
will my
How do
monkey
you think about upgrades?
Sorry, I have 500 IQ question. Just tell me simple terms. Will my monkey talk to me?
You can build a new monkey that talks to you. That's correct.
Got it. Okay, that's all I want to know.
Yeah,
Go on.
yeah.
Sorry, check.
Yeah. No, so how are you thinking about upgrades? So now if each of these are individual NFTs, like are you going, and then there are like hundreds of thousands of people who are using your apps, so are you going to update each one of this individually, or you have like a central repository where how are you thinking about upgrades?
Yeah, definitely think it's super important. So there's different ways of thinking about xNFTs. There's like xNFTs, which are truly non-fungible, and then there's like semi-fungible xNFTs, which might be like more similar to like a normal app on an app store. And so for that latter case, the way we solve that is by basically having a layer around Metaplex that has this like one-to-many relationship between like the code metadata and then the ownership or the installs, if you want to call it that. So there's really just one URI that you would have to update if you wanted to swap out the code for something else.
Can you give me an example of a couple of apps that you think folks will almost immediately start building using this?
Yeah, so the first ones that I'm particularly excited about for myself is so stake DGods. It's like the first one. I want to see my DGods in my wallet. Not only my DGods, but every NFT project that has a staking protocol. So that's like the first one I'm excited about because I just like love my NFTs and I want to show them to people. The second one that I think I'm like particularly excited about, just because like I don't know, I'm a developer. It's just like, oh, let's build an Anchor xNFT where we can like use like do things like introspect the blockchain and generate IDLs and get clients through a UI to like interact with things. Other ones that I know that like I think will have like a lot of compelling usage is like probably Mango is like a pretty sweet one, which is that like namely their bar lending system. So for those that you don't know, like Mango is like probably the most like legitimate, successful DAO. And when I say legitimate, I really just mean like they're an actual DAO on Solana. It's like, and they have this like bar lending system that's built on top of Serum. And so you can like deposit in some tokens and get some interest and then, get those tokens out.
Do you think it's possible to airdrop a trade? So let's say I'm taking a trade and you want to follow me, and I'm like, and I just airdrop it to like 500 wallets that want to follow me, and they push a button and the trade executes. Are you seeing social use cases for things like this?
Yeah,
One
you
time
can
NFT?
totally do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of use cases that I have in mind, and mainly the starting use case is 10xing on the dimension of like number of assets and protocols in a single user interface. Like that's like kind of my singular goal at the moment. But these types of like dynamic social use cases that you're referring to are super compelling and is something that like I haven't even begun to think about. And would love to see people explore.
And this almost replaces your Gmail inbox in a Web2 world, right? It's just a richer inbox of not just communications but also transactions.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's like a super compelling way of thinking about this. Yeah.
I like how my question was, can a monkey talk, and all of yours were, so much better.
Okay, but you say that, but I think like can a monkey talk maybe is the most like pertinent question with respect to like where product market fit is currently with crypto, which is that like if you, I think Anatoly at the Solana Saga event, like you're showing a bunch of stats. If you take a look at the numbers of like how people are using Solana, it's all NFTs. Like holy moly, cannoli, toli, guacamole, like NFTs. Like it's incredible, right? And so this is actually going to be like the whole next phase of the whole xNFT story, which like we haven't really gotten into, we haven't really shared publicly. But like things like talking monkeys are things that I'm super excited to build in the future. We haven't gotten there yet, but I think it's going to be like tons of fun.
Guys, talking monkeys is where all the action's at. Just trust me. If I can have an NFT with monetary value and then I have a personal connection with it and it talks back to me, insane.
Guys,
Like imagine the
tanmay
monkey feeling
broke
sad
Armani.
when you
This is
list the monkey's like, why are you letting me go, bro? Don't be like this. So good. So good.
Tanmay broke Armani. So is there anything like, there are developers watching, there are also users who potentially want to use this. At least I am a user who's enthusiastic about trying and giving feedback. Is there anything for them that they can immediately get on top of at the moment?
So the answer is no and yes. So right now we are kind of like building the ship as we're flying. So the name of the game for us at the moment is we've identified like the first batch of xNFTs that we want to build with like external partners. And the name of the game is just like, we need to build those as fast as possible because it'll help us inform the rest of the system. So things like the stake DGods, the Anchor xNFT. And so right now we're just like building those internally with our team. So that we can bootstrap things like documentation, bootstrap the developer APIs and the framework. And so like the next phase will be like a more open, but still private developer beta. Right now we're calling it the alpha, where we can actually bring in developers to start building on this stuff. So right now there's still a lot of like important work to do. And we're trying to just move as quickly as possible.
And this is going to be multi-chain, right?
Yeah. So we're starting with Solana. That's kind of like the thing we know really well, but the intention is for it to be a multi-chain thing.
And can you maybe talk through what the intersection with the Solana SMS and the smartphone that's releasing is? Does that help you, or are they mutually exclusive efforts?
Yeah, no, they're super complementary. I'm super excited about SMS and Saga. So There's a lot of different ways that you can think about it. You can think of xNFTs as like kind of just like a new category in the App Store that they're building. And so this, you could have things like, your animated JPEGs or your transactions that you airdrop to your friends, or just your normal vanilla applications that maybe have some like token associated with it. And so this is like kind of, you can think of it in those terms. But I think what would be really exciting to me would be to have like native integration. So if like on the home screen you had like widgets that were like your xNFTs, so like your animated JPEGs or whatever, would be like super cool, like your Tamagotchi or your talking monkey or whatever. And I think like that is like kind of the ultimate like end state. I would love to see xNFTs like integrated natively into the phone.
And everybody has a different app screen, right? Then in that
Right,
case,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm so happy I thought about the talking monkey, guys. I feel like I really added to the conversation.
You really did. It's probably like the most important like part of executable NFTs.
Can you not do this, Armani? Please, just don't encourage him. All right.
You guys laugh,
Yeah.
but I'm dead serious.
As is he. That's the problem.
So where does Anchor fit into all of this, right? You have xNFT, there is Backpack, and then there's the Coral OS, and then there is also Anchorlang. There's like a strong community around Anchorlang. So what does the future of Anchor look like, and how does it fit into everything, all the other awesome things that you're building out?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Anchor, you can think of this as kind of just like a very natural progression of Anchorlang. We've kept the the branding and the visual identity separate, only because like I view Anchor as this like public good that like kind of, I work on and kind of am like the benevolent dictator of, but it's very much a public good that like nobody like really owns, right? So it's a neutral thing on Solana. We definitely want xNFTs to like get to that point. But kind of the first motivation is like building like, amazing experiences and products and things like that. And that's very in its like nascent stages at the moment. Whereas Anchor is like much more mature. So we didn't want to like kind of like muddy, the Anchor kind of like community with like this new thing that's super experimental and we don't know if it's even going to work or not. But yeah, Anchor is like, the set of tooling and for building like the core protocols that all this stuff is built on. So it's foundational to like everything we do. In terms of like things that we're super excited for Anchor in the future, I'm super excited for this like concept of the Anchor program registry. So apr.dev, if you guys haven't seen it, it started out as this central repository for all the smart contracts on Solana, where you can verify like the bytecode matches what's on chain. And kind of exposing that as an API for like wallets and explorers to use. But I'm super excited about like extending this to just be like a general like set of developer tooling that kind of like we all use in our like day-to-day lives when building stuff on Solana. And so yeah, super excited about Anchor. It's kind of core to our identity, and I think that like super excited to keep pushing forward on it.
Armani, do you think that it is necessary to have like the executable code on chain? I know you refer to RV, for instance, and having a patch of code live there. Is that something that's programmable in that that developers can just choose to have it in places where they can edit easily if they need to, and that's just a risk that they underwrite on where that happens?
Yeah, you could use S3, you could use whatever you want.
Yeah.
That's really just the URI parameter inside of the token metadata account on Solana. So yeah, absolutely.
Because if it's like a one-time thing, maybe it's not that important. It's not that financially like
Yeah, totally.
dense. Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Okay, this is very cool because I think this is the first time I truly understand the potential of what this can be. And it's effectively an app store, come an email inbox, come text messaging inbox, right? You can airdrop anything to any wallet. And that's
Talking
very
monkeys,
cool.
Talking monkeys. I love the
Yeah.
airdropping trades as well. That's also like a
Right?
Armani, as you know, India is a we have 900 million 12-year-old developers in this country. Almost everyone except for me and Akshay is 12 years old and is developing. If you could talk to them for a minute and uh, tell them, hey, why they should build on Rust and not on any other language, what would you say?
I would say don't worry about any programming language, and that programming languages are really just details that you can pick up. It doesn't matter if it's Rust, it doesn't matter if it's C, Python, JavaScript, whatever. Like as like developers that like build things every day, and we have certain expertise and we have paychecks and things like that. We're kind of incentivized to have these like tribal affiliations with programming languages and blockchains and other sets of tools. But honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The thing that I would encourage 12-year-olds, which is so ridiculous to say out loud, the thing I would encourage like young developers that are getting started is to not really worry about any piece of technology, and you just focus on having fun and focus on being creative and focus on fundamentals. You can learn any programming language, and you'll probably be building the next Rust. And that's how you build the future, right? You have to understand the fundamentals and then build something new rather than get caught up in like whatever the latest fad is.
Yes, but why should it be Rust?
Why should it be Rust?
We can pick up any language, but why should it be Rust?
Yeah, so Rust is great.
I think you said something like it's the most important language of the next decade in one of your tweets. Am I quoting you accurately?
Um, it seems unlikely that I would have tweeted that, but maybe I did. Maybe I had some overconfidence. So I'm a big fan of Rust. I would say Rust is a super compelling programming language if you for one of two reasons. The first reason is if you want to do things that require Rust. So like you want to build on Solana, or you want to build on like some system that requires you to do it. In which case, great, go use Rust. You have like, it's a great programming language. It's fun. It's not that difficult relative to something like C or C++. You just have to do it if you want to use that set of tooling. But like, if we step out of the Web3 world and like more into like actual, like the real world, I suppose, Rust is great if the main reason that you would use Rust is if you need the performance. So you need a programming language without a runtime, without a garbage collector, and you need to be close to the metal where you're either doing something like HFT or high frequency trading, or something like building a high performance like exchange, because there's a lot of trade-offs with Rust. Rust is, I said it was easy language, but it's only easy relative to hard languages like C or C++. But if you're looking at something like Python or Golang or JavaScript, it's much more challenging and it requires much more knowledge of the actual like programming language design than in these other programming languages. But if you're just writing a web app or you're doing like what 99% of developers are using, then honestly, you probably don't need to use Rust. And so that is like kind of the business argument for Rust. If you're just like a 12-year-old developer that wants to like learn cool shit, then like, yeah, Rust is just like a super fun programming language. You'll learn to think in a new way, and that'll be applicable to the rest of your programming career.
You said the most important job of an engineering manager is to block the rest of the company from wasting dev resources. Can you say a bit more?
Yeah, so I mean, companies are this strange place because you have all of these people that are all trying to like work together, but they're also trying to like have as much impact as possible. But the one constraining resource tends to be like developer capacity. And so you tend to, in companies, I don't know about you guys, but one thing I've experienced pretty frequently is like, well, you have all these people asking you to build stuff, right? And the question is, well, like, what are the things that you're going to prioritize and say no to? And oftentimes, if you're an engineer, like you're kind of heads down, you're kind of like the code monkey doing the work or whatever, and you don't have like the full picture of like what is the most impactful thing that I can be doing at any given point in time. And really that is the job of the engineering manager, which is to say, okay, we have a bunch of engineers, we can build a million things, but what is the thing that's going to push the business forward and like make this stock more valuable, or like make us one step closer to the mission that we're trying to achieve. And so the engineering manager's job is to prioritize and to tell the engineers like, well, this is what we need to work on because this is going to get us one step closer to achieving our mission. And really, I guess you have to protect the engineers because like everybody's going to be like kind of talking to them and saying, hey, go build this, go build that, go build that. But there's infinitely many things that we can build. And Steve Jobs is famous for talking about this. It's not about like, focus is not about like, picking things that we should be working on. It's all about what you say no to. And the engineering manager's role is to always say no to things. So it's all about opportunity costs. It's all about prioritization. And in the context of a startup, that is the most important thing to do.
So Armani, we asked some of the folks on Twitter what we should ask you. So here's a small selection of questions that came in. The first one is, Anchor SDK good docs when?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. So the docs just got an overhaul. So if you take a look at anchorlang.com, anchor-lang.com, you'll see we're starting to answer this question. But maybe to give some more background context, I kind of described the way we develop Anchor as like a lazy evaluation loop where we see a problem, we hope somebody else implemented it, nobody implemented it, so we go do it in Anchor, and then we kind of have this loop, right? And that continues to be true to this day, which is like we only build Anchor because we need to build Anchor to build great things, right? Our goal is to not build like, developer tooling for the sake of developer tooling. Our goal is to build developer tooling so that developers can impact the world in meaningful ways, right? And so that's kind of like always been my view. It's still my view. And that's kind of like the way we prioritize things. And so I would say that like in terms of the priority list, like good documentation, and if you talk to Anatoly, this kind of resonates with him as well. It's good, it's important, but at the state that Solana has been in for the past 2 years, it's been more of a, it's been a low priority, right? Because good developers will always read the source code, they'll read the API references, they'll figure it out. And what's important for them is actually building the primitives so that they can build amazing things. What's not important to them is having like these docs that are a bit of a vanity product. And so, yeah, it's all a question of opportunity costs. And out of the million things that I can be doing, should I be working on Anchor documentation or should I be working on building xNFTs? And I think over the past couple months, the answer is very clear to me that like xNFTs have the ability to like change the trajectory of the ecosystem, and documentation will basically do nothing. And so that's kind of the way I think about it. But we are trying to scale like that product and trying to get more people to contribute to it. I am looking for like a DevRel lead for Anchor to help out with exactly this. Just haven't really found the right person until now. So would love to have more docs, but it's a question of opportunity cost.
Yeah, it feels like this was such a comprehensive answer. I feel like Armani has been answering this a lot. It's like, guys, I have talking monkey to figure out. Can you guys please let me be? Someone's asked what is your vision for Coral and how does Coral fit into the rest of Solana mobile stack?
Yeah, so I think my vision for Coral, it's pretty simple. Build amazing products that,
Sorry, Armani, can you just describe what Coral is?
Yeah. So Coral is our company that we just formed to build all these things, to build Anchor, to build xNFTs, to build Backpack. You can think of it as like kind of the holding company or the Apple. Backpacks and xNFTs are kind of like the first manifestation of that. But we hopefully have a lot more to show in the coming months that I'm excited to share.
What's your take on the current bear market skepticism on Web3 being a thing? We're seeing a lot of like Twitter influencers and founders and talking about how there is no use case for Web3 and that it's largely an invention of financial speculation by venture capital funds. How do you think about that? What's your kind of like response to those folks?
Yeah, I think it's a super important question. And I think like for the most part, they haven't been wrong, although they are wrong. There has been a huge amount of inflow in capital going to, just to be frank, just like either bad ideas or bad products or just people that had no intention on ever actually building an important product. And like, honestly, one of the things that really kind of rubs me the wrong way about like a lot of the way people think about crypto over the past couple of years is that like a lot of people kind of saw Bitcoin and saw Dogecoin and like, these products, maybe Bitcoin is a bad example, Dogecoin is probably a better example. They saw these meme coins and people started thinking, oh wow, like Dogecoin exists, therefore value is this arbitrary thing. And it's not about like building things with intrinsic value because like that's not a real thing. Like, it's all collective imagination. Like, and so it's all about memes and things like that. And I think memes are important. But fundamentally, I think there are things that do have value. And there are things that make the world a better place, right? We can save lives. We can make systems more efficient. We can make financial transactions more transparent. We can mitigate corruption. We can make self-sovereign finance like a real thing. We can do things that provide real value to the world. And those things are worth doing more so than things that are arbitrary and don't bring value to the world. And so I think a lot of people have gotten confused in crypto over the past couple of years, and have gone way too far to this extreme. And I think this is where like a lot of the criticism, and it's like well thought out criticism that's like pointing out these things and thinking, yeah, this is like not valuable for the world. Why are you doing this? Like you should be like working on real problems and using all of this talent and money to like make the world a better place. And I would say I like empathize with like that criticism. I think it's just like correct. But at the same time, I think that criticism is missing a lot of like the really fundamentally innovative things that is happening in the crypto space, and things that actually do have value and can push the world forward, right? So like things as simple as like blockchain as a means to have auditable like systems, right? I think this is something that falls out of Web3 and blockchain innovation since like the creation of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's something that we might see more of in the future, right? So for example, you can imagine a system like FTX or NYSE, or Coinbase or whatever. You have these Web2 systems, but you could actually take blockchain technology and you can make the state of all of those systems provably fair, by virtue of the existence of like some checksum or hash or whatever, right? So for example, with FTX, you can actually look at all the fills, you can look at all the liquidations, you can look at all the balances, and at the, in a split second say, this is provably fair. No engineer or no like scammer in the organization manipulated the balances, right? And that's a pretty valuable value proposition and a valuable piece of technology that you can bring to other places. It might not be censorship resistant, which is like what most blockchains do, but like the idea of like an audit log, is something that is like much more tenable now than it was like before blockchain was so big. And kind of you can look at this technology from that lens, but you can also look at it from the lens of like, I don't know, maybe much more compelling things like DeFi and Bitcoin and this idea of like unmanipulatable, like kind of self-executing contracts that truly are kind of built by and for the people, right? So this is kind of like the whole story of Bitcoin. This is the whole idea of DeFi. And I think, I think a lot of people have can explain these topics much more eloquently than me. So like, I won't bother going into that. But one thing that is near and dear to my heart is NFTs. And it's not because of NFTs as like a rampant form of like speculation, but it's looking at NFTs. If anybody actually is into NFTs and goes into these Discord communities, it's truly incredible the amount of raw energy that is like coalescing from people all around the world that otherwise would never have met each other. And it's truly incredible to see. Like if you look at the xNFT Discord and you look at the Twitter, like there's so much amazing content that is just being created by just people being incentivized. And we don't incentivize them. We don't have like a token. We haven't like given them NFTs. It's just people like vibing together, which is this incredible piece of energy that is like being harnessed for like artists and creators that would otherwise be starved, with respect to like their ability to earn an income and be rewarded for their skill set, but now has the ability to express themselves and get rewarded for the value that they're creating for the world. And so I think the creator economy is something that definitely resonates me, and is something that we're seeing fall out of the NFT landscape that I think we're just going to see more and more of. And that's something that like resonates me, and I think is a path that I would love to see us go down with Coral and xNFTs and Backpack, to basically provide these people the tools and the means to like make a living, by expressing their artistic talents in ways that they've never been able to express before.
Wow, that was amazing. And on that note, Armani, this has been a fantastic interview. I'm really grateful that you could make it. Tanmay, do you have any last questions, comments, thoughts?
No, this was great, and I just want to ask Shek if he can translate the whole thing in English and explain it to me later. That's all. Just kidding, Armani. Thank you so much for taking our time, man. Everything sounds exciting. We'd love to have you back in a few months once there's more progress on, all things Coral across all the fronts.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Armani. Thank you.